The New Testament often gives further revelation regarding certain Old Testament events. This is true when it comes to the sons of God in Genesis 6. The importance of this event is shown by the references in both letters of Peter and the letter of Jude, who identified the sons of God as angels who sinned by sexual immorality during the days of Noah. First Peter 3 says that after God raised Jesus from the dead, he went and made a proclamation to the spirits in prison, who in former times did not obey, when God waited patiently in the days of Noah during the building of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were saved through water. Note that the setting here is during the days of Noah, that is, just before the flood, and the subject is about disobedience, that is, sinning. The word spirits is typically used for demons or angels. For example, throughout the Gospels, Jesus is said to drive out unclean spirits. In Hebrews chapter 1, God makes his holy angels spirits or winds. And in Revelation, there are 7 spirits, that is, angels from God. Then in his second letter, Peter adds, God did not spare the angels who sinned, but threw them down into Tartarus and delivered them to be kept in chains of darkness until judgment. And if he did not spare the ancient world, but protected Noah, a preacher of righteousness, and 7 others, when he brought a flood on the world of the ungodly, and if he reduced the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes and condemned them to ruin, making them an example to those who were going to be ungodly, and if he rescued righteous Lot, distressed by the unrestrained behavior of the immoral, for as he lived among them, that righteous man tormented himself day by day with the lawless deeds he saw and heard, then the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, especially those who follow the polluting desires of the flesh and despise authority. Again, note the subject is angels who sinned, that is, disobeyed God. And the time period again is before and just after the flood. The Greek word Tartarus, many times mistranslated as, quote, hell, that is, Gehenna, the lake of fire, is not the same as the Hebrew word for the grave, Sheol. Tartarus is described instead as a prison, that is, a holding place, that is not for humans but angels only in the New Testament. Consider the story of Satan in Revelation 18 and Revelation 20, and also in the books of Enoch and the extra biblical book of Jubilees. Tartarus, therefore, is synonymous with the abyss in Luke 8 and Revelation 9, as well as those other extra biblical Jewish works. Then we have this from Jude. Now, I want to remind you, though you know everything once and for all, that the Lord, after saving a people out of the land of Egypt, subsequently destroyed those who did not believe. And angels who did not keep their own dominion or rulership, but abandoned their proper dwelling place, these he has kept in eternal restraints or chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, since they, in the same way as these, that is, angels, indulged in sexual perversion and went after strange flesh, are exhibited as an example in undergoing the punishment of eternal fire. The account by Jude is directly dependent on the first book of Enoch, which is the earliest account of the fall of the so-called Watchers, also known as fallen angels. And in First Enoch, in the section called the Book of the Watchers, written around 300 BC, the opening verses of Genesis 6 are almost quoted verbatim. And when the sons of men had multiplied in those days, beautiful and comely daughters were born to them, and the watchers, the sons of heaven, saw them and desired them, that they said to one another, Come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the daughters of men, and let us beget for ourselves children. The giants, which is the Greek translation for the Hebrew Nephilim, who are produced from the cohabitation of spirits, echoing perhaps the spirits in prison of 1 Peter 3:19, and flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling, because they are born from men and from the holy watchers, who are the angels, from the Greek translation of Daniel chapter 4, is their beginning and primal origin. Note that during the Second Temple period, the word watcher was a common term for angels of God, also known as sons of God. The Word Biblical Commentary notes that the coincidences of language with Jude are quite striking. The word translated as domain or rulership is the Greek archi, which is used of heavenly cosmic powers or principalities throughout the New Testament in Romans 8, Ephesians 1 and 3, Ephesians 6, and Colossians 1 and 2. The angels are in, quote, perpetual chains. Compare the imprisoned spirits language of 1 Peter 3:19 and also in the first book of Enoch, where the angel called Azazel was bound hand and feet, and the rest of the fallen angels for 70 generations and kept under gloomy darkness in the same place, Tartarus. The great judgment day described by Jude is, of course, the day of the Lord. From the Old Testament, scriptures like Joel chapter 2 and the New Testament in Acts 2, verse 20, also see the books of Enoch. And in verse 7, Jude says that these are the angels who committed the sin of sexual immorality by desiring to go after, quote, strange flesh. Jude's point here is that the angels sinned because of their lust for women. All these stories assume that angels were created with a free will, that is, the choice to continue to obey or disobey God, as Satan did. This might explain what God says about angels in the book of Job. Even in his servants he puts no trust, and his angels he charges with error. Even the heavens are not absolutely pure in his sight. On the phrase strange flesh, the Word Biblical Commentary notes that the reference is to the incident in Genesis 19. Strange flesh cannot, as many commentators and most translations assume, refer to homosexual practice, in which the flesh is not different. It must mean the flesh of angels. The sin of the Sodomites, not strictly of the other towns, reached its zenith in this most extravagant of sexual aberrations, which would have transgressed the order of creation as shockingly as the fallen angels did. The point is, in both of these cases, it is sexual immorality between humans and angels. The Peter and Jude passages give us not only the who, but also the what, when, where, and why of the terrible events that go all the way back to Genesis 6, thus leaving no room for speculation or doubt. That the Hebrew B'nai Elohim, sons of God, are angels of God, was the earliest and predominant view in and out of the Bible. B'nai Ha-Elohim of Genesis 6 appears also in Job chapter 1 and 2, and without the article in Job chapter 38, and is translated as angels by the Greek versions of Codex Vaticanus and Alexandrinus. Also note that in Daniel 3, verse 25, the king sees a son of the gods, or God, who is later explicitly identified as God's Malach, which is the Hebrew for angel in Daniel 3, verse 28. The Dead Sea Scrolls fragment of a Hebrew text found in Qumran, Cave 4, from Deuteronomy 32, verse 43, differs from the Masoretic and reads, "Shout joyously, O heavens, with him, and worship him, O sons of God, B'nai Elohim, and ascribe to him might, all you sons of the mighty, B'nai Elim. Shout joyously, O nations, concerning his people, and accord strength to him, all you angels of God." In another fragment at Qumran, it is said that Azazel, the name of the leader of the rebellious fallen angels, begat giants with the daughters of men. Philo also during this time in his book on giants, and when the angels of God saw the daughters of men that they were beautiful, they took unto themselves wives of all of them whom they chose. Later, Josephus in his Antiquities says that for many angels of God kept company with women and begat sons, for the tradition is that these men did what resembled the acts of those whom the Grecians called giants. Also see the Testament of Reuben and 2nd Baruch. This was the only known view up to the 3rd century AD, when first questioned by Sextus Julius Africanus, who said that the sons of God were in fact the sons of Seth. This was later copied by Augustine of Hippo in the 5th century AD. To summarize, Genesis 6 continues the theme of the fall and subsequent conflict between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman back in Genesis 3. Peter and Jude further use the story as a warning of the type of punishment that awaits all disobedient. The moral of the story is captured well by the Work Biblical Commentary. When it says that one reason for Jude's use of the term to keep is to make a grim play on words with did not keep in the first part of the verse. Since the angels have not kept their position, the Lord now keeps them chained. The angels contrast with faithful Christians who should keep their position in God's love and whom God keeps safe, not for judgment, but for salvation at the last day.